Polish President Duda has ignored warnings from the European Union. On Wednesday, he signed 2 laws overhauling the country's justice system.
These bills have been passed by the lower house, then Senate without any amendments, and I have decided to sign these bills.
The controversial bills give his ruling party control over the selection of judges. His announcement came only hours after the EU's Commission decision to invoke Article 7, which could eventually lead to Poland losing its voting rights in the bloc. The EU criticised the laws as threatening EU norms and undermining the independence of Polish courts, and it's now given Warsaw 3 months to reverse its course or face sanctions. Many Poles have been protesting, saying the move is against the constitution, but Duda rejects the criticisms. Since coming to power in 2015, his right-wing Law and Justice Party, PIS, has clashed with Brussels over several reforms, including its immigration policy and control over the media. While the PIS slammed the EU's decision as politically motivated, the opposition fears economic penalties.
This law on the common courts violates European directives and the law on discrimination because it pushes judges into retirement. This causes a lot of controversy that will end with financial penalties.
The row is also overshadowing a visit by British Prime Minister Theresa May. She sees the Eastern European country as a potential ally as the UK prepares to leave the EU. While Poles are overwhelmingly pro-EU, some nationalists are calling on their government to leave the Union just as Britain voted to. And that's a scenario that could harm the country's economy. Poland is the biggest recipient of EU aid, around $12 billion a year. It's received more than $160 billion in total since joining the bloc in 2004, way more than the $55 billion it has contributed as a member. Economists say the country could go bankrupt if it was to leave the EU and forced to repay the money it's received. Poland's economy also depends on the EU for trade. It exports more than 80% of its goods to the bloc, which brings in around $220 billion annually. The country's economy has steadily been growing since it joined, but increasing criticism of its government from the EU and even the US could undermine Poland as a safe bet for investors. Ben Tornquist, TRT World.
Joining me now from London is Andrew Wrobel. He's the head of content strategy and publishing and a founding partner at the Emerging Europe think tank. Welcome to Money Talks, Andrew. Great to have you. Just how likely is a poll exit, do you think?
Well, in the material that we just heard, I would say you were talking about an overwhelming support for the European Union. I think that with 88%, and this is the latest survey that I am familiar with, I wouldn't say that is that probable. I think Polish people have been quite used to being part of the EU and wouldn't see themselves being outside.
In this current spat with the European Union, do you think that the government is merely exercising its right as a sovereign nation?
Well, if we look at what has been going on for the last 2 years, it's clear that back in December 2015, when the European Commission first reacted to the situation in Poland, asking for explanation, the government has been trying to say that they have been constantly realizing the will of the people that elected. It is true that the support of the current government enjoys about a 50% support of the people, but I'm not sure that this is the way going forward.
Andrew, how much power does the EU have over Poland in this issue?
We don't know how the situation will unfold. So currently, we need to see whether there will be any sanctions introduced, or whether Poland will be scared and provide some explanation, as the European Commission is explaining. We know that the country is linked to the European Union heavily. If we look at the foreign investment in the country, 91% of foreign direct investment comes from the European Union. You also talked about the trade with the EU. Only in the first 10 months of this year, it was over 130 billion euros, and I'm talking about export only. You also mentioned the huge influx of or inflow of EU funds. That is, 160 billion. Euros is an enormous amount. So
right.
I would say that in the times of globalization, there's just no way a single country can exist on its own. It's linked to other economies too much, and clearly Poland has been linked to the EU economy heavily over the years.
OK. Andrew Wrobel from Emerging Europe, thank you very much indeed.